Hey, it's Amethyst Virgo. It's Amethyst Virgo. I'm gonna start the friendship series. Before I get started, please make sure that you are also following me on TikTok, Amethyst Virgo Astrology. Sometimes I will post things on there that I don't intend to post on this channel. So if you like my content, feel free to jump over there, and I'll make sure that you are following me. So I want to talk about this friendship series. So I do have a couple of series. I have the zodiac partners. I have a couple videos years ago that I made about like the Aries partner, the Virgo partner, etc. And I also have the Aries parent, the Cancer parent, the Gemini parent. I have all that. I will say with this video, of course, you're going to have your own experience with Aries because we all have a birth chart and it's going to be different. And so for some people, you might have Aries in your 5th house, and that means you have fun with Aries people. You have Aries in the 11th house. You associate with a lot of people who have that energy in general. You have Aries in the 7th house, on the 7th house cusp, or, but people who have Aries in other placements, it can be an issue. It can be triggering. Some people can be like, wait, I have Aries on the cusp of my 8th house, and it's really difficult dealing with Aries people because there's always some secret, there's always something deeper that I have to figure out about them. It's difficult. Somebody might say I have Aries in the cusp of the 12th house, and then I have planets in the 12th house, and it makes it very hard for me to trust because I feel like there's always some deception, right? Like there's very many reasons why you may or may not vibe with this energy that has nothing to do with the sign itself, but has to do with your chart. So I do want to say that first and foremost. I don't really want this to be a venting channel or series, but I feel free to share your experience. So Aries, so off the bat already with Aries, we already know, right? People are going to be like, Aries, but I'm the Aries friend and I'm the greatest friend. Like this, everybody's going to think they're the greatest everything, right? And what's funny about that is with the Aries friend, a lot of Aries people do think they are the best friend that you've ever had. Like, how Aries is sometimes that one where, like, if anything happens wrong in a friendship, Aries is going to be that person that sometimes like, but I didn't do anything wrong. Like, I just did this. I just said this, but I was their best friend. Because Aries sometimes in a friendship can give a lot. And I know people will sometimes default to Aries and like spontaneous and selfish. And, there's some negative characteristics of all signs. But when you look at the negative side of Aries, that's what people tend to say, right? There's this single-mindedness. There is this brashness. There's this approach where there's like, you're not thinking before you're doing something, right? But on the other hand, when Aries does care about someone as a friend, especially, but even a partnership, like there is this, I'm not going to hold things against you type of stuff. I think when you get into grudges, you're going to see more of that, I would say, with signs like Sagittarius, where Sagittarius, because it's the mental fire, can sometimes hold a grudge and be petty, especially if they feel like someone is like manipulating or lying to them, because it's a big thing for them to like their belief systems and what people say to them. The truth matters, right? And sometimes Scorpio can get involved in that revenge stuff too. I think for Aries friend, they can sometimes forgive things. And surprise, people might assume like, oh, they'll just leave you. Aries can forgive, but they're not going to do it too many times before they realize I don't really want to be in this friendship, right? Because Aries is a type that can make friends with other people quite easily. So here's what I mean by friends easily. An Aries energy person can end up like, all right, you know what? My friends don't want to go. I'm going to go with my cousin and them, and we're going to go to the concert, right? Aries is, it's not like Cancer or like Virgo or Taurus, and those signs might be like, I'm not going with anyone I don't know. I don't know them. Even Scorpio, I don't know them. I'm not going, right? Aries is like, and the Aries and Leo kind of too, like, well, let's just go. The more the merrier. What you're going to have to understand about the Aries friend is the Aries people who like to get up and go and just enjoy. And remember, it is the first time in the zodiac. So there is this desire to be places, to be out, to be entertained in a way, right? Leo sometimes likes to be the entertainment. That's the difference. So for Aries people just to sit still, for some of them, it's going to be difficult. Now, of course, you do have Aries people who have more Earth placements. You can have some Aries people who don't have any Aries placement but the sun. That's it. And their chart is positioned in a way in which they really don't. They're not as open. They're not as extroverted type of Aries people. But the ones who are, they're going to go with or without you. So if you think you're going to say, I had a bad week, let's just curl up on the couch and watch movies and all weekend, Aries might get you, you might get an Aries for an hour or two, but eventually Aries, if they need to do something, they're going to do it. And it doesn't mean they won't console you or won't be there for you. But if it goes against what they want to do, you're going to see they're not the type of friend that's going to give up what they want for you. They're not, I would not say this is a sign of self-sacrificing. It's just not, okay? And it doesn't mean a person can't be, in general, but when we're talking about the general perspective, no, right? So you can't take offense to that, because in their nature, they have to go do something, especially if you know that's how your friend is, right? You can't hold that against them, because you might need to lean on someone else who's a little bit more like compassionate in that regard, because Aries will pick you up and go. But if you're calling Aries up like, look, I'm feeling down, I just want to get out this week. Great. They got you. They're going to tell you where to go. They're going to say, let's do this, let's do that, right? Sometimes Aries friends, in some situations, it can feel like Aries people are competing with you sometimes. And I think that can sometimes show up in all the fire signs to some degree, the suns especially, but you can see like even Mars, like there's a competitive nature there. Right. And so if you can't take it, if you can't deal with that, if that makes you, if you're too sensitive to that energy, because Aries, like, I'm just playing. And sometimes they are. I would say some of the Aries people, there's a lot of playfulness. It's playful energy to Aries, I would say, and Leo, right? When you dig deep enough, there's this playfulness. There's this fun, which is having fun. Like, come on, right? Aries is the type, wouldn't be surprised. Some of them like to prank their friends. Some of them, can have, they could be very blunt with their opinions and their thoughts, more so not as opinionated as like Sag, with the kind of, Sag and the messaging and things like that. But with Aries, it can sometimes be, they say whatever, especially if it's an Aries with a Mercury and Aries, they kind of just say whatever. And it's not always intended to be negative. It's they have to get that energy out. And so if you, can't deal with that type of person, of course, Virgo is a Virgo. Like, I don't by default gravitate to Aries energy, right? I just, don't. However, I do have Mercury and Leo. And so sometimes when I'm dealing with an Aries energy person and I can kind of see where they're coming from, especially, with my Mercury being in a fire sign. Because, so it's like, you got to know how to, dish it. Aries can be that sign. They might be very playful. They might say something, combat you, joke around. You got to be ready. You got to be ready, because they might, especially people who have like, think about like an example, like if you're a woman and you hang out with a lot of guys, like you're the girl, you're one of the guys type of girl, like you might be, you have some Aries guys in that group, or you're the Aries girl, like you're going to dish it out. Like you're just going to say things, and it's kind of like a playfulness. But for people who are too sensitive, that can sometimes be an issue. And so when we're thinking of friendships, I think from the Aries perspective, it is sometimes understanding how other people need to be spoken to, how other people deal with situations. And for people who are dealing with Aries people, understand, like, I would say typically, though Aries can sometimes, the worst part can be when they're considered, like, people view them as like single-minded or selfish, right? Typically, though, it's not a malicious sign. It's not really trying to manipulate you. It's really not trying to do any of that at all. The worst that happens sometimes, again, like that impulsiveness, like saying something they didn't mean to say, or saying something that they're like, well, why are you taking it so seriously? Because Aries is not a sign that deals with emotions. It's not an emotional sign. Aries might say something one moment and forget they said it the next, because they're on to the next thought, and I didn't realize that you took it that seriously. But I think, though, in terms of, also, they can be people who motivate you, right? Because they're not, I would say in most cases, unless somebody's an extreme hater, they're not going to stop you from being great, right? They're going to want you to be great. They're going to say, go ahead, keep doing it. I love what you're doing. This is great, right? Again, only when they're trying to compete with you will you see like that more negative side. But the ones who aren't trying to compete go ahead. So they're not the type to really, be negative Nancy. Well, why are you going to do that? Did you think about this? Did you think about that? They're really not the type to do that. But like I said, competitiveness could be something like this. A person who has two friends, best friends or whatever, one has a business idea, the other one's like, oh, okay, that's a good idea, whatever. And then 2 years later, the friend who said it was a good idea creates the same business that you just came up with. Like that type of stuff sometimes can happen because Aries is a sign that can just go. And sometimes there's not, when I say there's not thought behind it, I don't mean that they're not thinking. I mean that there's not a plan sometimes. You know how you have a Mercury in Capricorn or a Mercury in Virgo, like there's a plan, it's diligent, I have to iron all this out. Aries energy wants to strike while the iron is hot. And that's not always a bad thing, because I think that's why you can see a lot of the cardinal signs like Aries be successful in business, because they're not afraid. I mean, business is a risk regardless. Doesn't matter how much money you have or your plans, like business is a risk. And when you make certain decisions because you have that courage, it really aligns with that Aries type energy. And so when you have an Aries on your side, they're not afraid. Okay, you know what? You're afraid to talk to that person? I'm not. Let's go, right? Oh, you're afraid to do that? I'm not afraid. Let's go, right? So you can sometimes, especially if the person's really loyal, it could benefit you because they want to be on your side. They want for you to come out on top. They are going to kind of like make sure you do everything that you're supposed to do. And they're kind of going to hold your feet to the fire. And what's interesting, sometimes Aries can end up even motivating you more than they motivate themselves. Aries can sometimes stop short. Like I said, it's not Capricorn there, which is one of the other cardinal signs, is that Aries is, I'm going to strike while it's here. I'm going to spark this. I'm going to get things moving, right? But sometimes if Aries gets stopped in any way, shape, or form, and it's like, well, we got to like actually revisit this. Let's pause. Let's think about it. Aries can be like, I'm not doing all that. I'm moving on to the next, right? So it is important, though, for Aries to sometimes take the advice they're giving other people about motivation and keeping strong and doing what they need to do. I think sometimes the benefit, though, of the Aries friend is they don't take things too seriously. And here's what I mean by that. Oh, okay, yeah, we had a little disagreement. I'm good. I said what I had to say, right? Like that's how they can sometimes come across. Like, I said what I had to say, got it out, we're good, let's move on. Are you someone go out to eat, right? So that's why I said it earlier about the grudge. I think like sometimes when you want, there are some people who take everything seriously, everything's sensitive, everything's a big problem, everything's a big issue. Now, don't get me wrong. Can you have some Aries individual that can be bullies, right? Some people feel bullied by their friends or whatever. But I think in general, you can find people who there's that fun-loving part. There is that they want to believe that you're a true friend. They want to believe it. I know we talk a lot about Aries and the maverick and the independence and courage. But remember, it's the first sign of the zodiac, so symbolically it is an infant. And by symbolically as an infant, there can sometimes be this kind of naive nature that can be associated. And here's what I mean by naive. I don't mean you're naive if you're an Aries. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you want to believe the best in something because you don't want things to be that complex, because you want to just experience things. And so sometimes there can be that level of blind trust. All right, I'm gonna trust what you said. All right, I'm gonna trust it, right? But the thing that sometimes happens, but this is where you're gonna get it messed up. You think you can keep doing that. So if you're a person like, oh yeah, I'm gonna keep borrowing money from this person, I'm gonna keep, talking behind their back and stuff like that. And then, but when they drop you, they drop you. When they drop you, they drop you. They're not gonna talk to you, they're not gonna hang out with you, they drop you, right? And they're done. And sometimes that can feel cold, or it could feel like, wow, that's messed up. They don't really care about anybody. But it's like, it's really because once it's a fire sign, it's the first fire sign. Once something is no longer hot, think of it symbolically. It's cold, I don't want it anymore. That's how they act. I don't want it anymore, right? Sometimes you can't get that hot, cold thing because when it's no longer, there's no furnace burning anymore in a relationship or a friendship, they are pretty much done. And you can sometimes see that. And then when you understand the fact that again, there is this level of, I'm trying to trust. I am trying to, what I think and what I see is what I thought it was. And sometimes you can deal with that. Now, as far as anger goes, you can sometimes see a little bit of uncontrolled anger in some Aries individuals. Some hide it more. Some depends on where the placements are as well. So sometimes you can get in conflict, especially if you are a sign that is squaring. If you are squaring Aries, you can sometimes get or opposing them. Like there could be difficulty in terms of fully understanding one another's approaches. And you could end up in situations where you don't vibe with this energy. You don't feel comfortable around this energy, right? But I think in general, when you're dealing with these people or people with a lot of Aries energy in the chart, there is there's a pick up and get back up and go again. Let's go, let's go, let's go, let's just do this, right? I think you can't really hold these people back, right? You can't hold them back. So like if you're trying to maintain a friendship, like it's important to like be a friend who is sometimes they might do something you don't get it. And because we don't get why people are doing things, a lot of times we think they're wrong. That's not always the case. A lot of times we just can't see people's vision. We just like people can't sometimes see our vision. And we're like, no, this is gonna work. And people are like, no, well, I don't see it. How's it gonna work? And you're like, it's gonna work, right? That's what you get with Aries, and that's why sometimes Aries doesn't bring people along for the ride, especially people who are tired of like people trying to tell them how to do things. So sometimes you can't, like, you might hear an idea or something they want to do, and you're like, that's crazy. Like, why are you doing that? But you gotta give them that room. You gotta give them that room to roam, because remember, this is your friend, it's not your kid. And it doesn't mean you let your friend, do something crazy without telling them, like cautioning them. But at the same time, you want to make sure you're not stifling them, because that's another reason sometimes you can lose a friend who's an Aries, because you're stifling them. You're being too judgmental. You are telling them, no, you can't do that. No, you shouldn't do that. Like they don't want to feel contained. There's other signs that also have that same Sagittarius, Aquarius don't want to feel contained. So I think it becomes important in that lens where you are sometimes taking a back seat. You have to kind of watch things unfold, and you'll see sometimes they do know what they're talking about, even though you might do it differently. They're an action oriented sign. They're a sign that has to go. They have to spark something. They have to start it. And sometimes Aries energy has to start before they think about the plan. And I know for some people it doesn't work. For Virgo, it's like, why would you do that? Why wouldn't you think it out first, right? And then do it, right? Whereas they're like, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna see what it is, let me jump in. Okay, I jumped in. Now let me rope everybody in. Okay, here's my plan. Again, that's not the best approach all the time, but sometimes it can actually be beneficial, right? And so in that sense, you end up with people who are always reminding us also of the lighter side of stuff, the fun stuff, how to get engaged in certain things. And so you can sometimes get a different perspective, especially if you are a sign that is a little bit more extroverted, or you're a sign that doesn't have as much of that take initiative type of approach.
I would also say with the Aries friend, whether you are the Aries friend or you are a person with an Aries friend, I would say there's also watch out Aries with trying to control people. And I know that might sound a certain way, but when we think of the fact that like Mars, and it's this like you move so fast and you have centered your own ideas that sometimes there could be a tendency to try to impose that on other people. And unless someone's asking for your help, sometimes it can rub people the wrong way, right? Like, so being very careful with how forceful your energy can be. And that can be really helpful for your own life, but it doesn't always match the energy of other people, right? Careful, Aries, because your energy, especially to other signs that are square you, that are opposing you, other signs that are quincunx you, like that approach doesn't work. That very brash. Just do it. Just try it this way. Just you should do it this way. Like you have to be very careful with that because that can turn people off, right? Now again, your fire sign, your fire sign, fellow people may understand that energy because they're going to take it and go with it and do their own thing. But sometimes in friendships, there can be issues with the believing that someone needs you to tell them what to do because you're like, well, I move fast and I move this way and I have this spark in me, but you can't impose things on other people. They have their own opinions, their own lives, their own experiences, and so sometimes you can get in conflict in your role by Mars. You can get in conflict with people who feel like you're trying to control them. Similarly to how Scorpio can be accused of that, but Scorpio is going to be more in a very underlying long game type of way. With Aries, it can be the suggestions you give. It can be what you want people to do for you. It can be those things, and it could come off as very pushy. And again, some people can vibe with that because they're going to spar with you back, right? But some people, it can cause like issues and tension in the friendship, especially if a person needs a more gentle approach. And so, though I think in many cases, like Aries can sometimes say, like, no, 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 people need my energy. Like they need this fire. I'm just lighting a fire to somebody. And so if somebody needs it, I think that could be helpful, right? In terms of motivating your friend. But if it comes to situations where it's causing tension or you're noticing someone's not responding to you the way that you think they would, that tends to mean like there's some rift that's happening or there's a disconnect. That's really not, you're not really on the same page, right? And so sometimes I think there can be that lack of foresight, because sometimes you can have an issue where like something happens, you don't talk about it, and Aries is like, oh, or forget that person. I'm not friends with them anymore anyway. Like they did this and that. But it's important to sometimes reflect. And I know again there can be some Aries who do that a lot based on what's in their birth chart. So again, I'm not pinpointing everybody, but if you're an Aries, you're like, wait, that has happened to me before. I was trying to help somebody and they got mad because of how I said it or what I did. That's probably what occurred. Your energy can come off very strong, and sometimes when it is perceived as being controlling or like that brash Mars energy, people can take that and say, you know what, this person is trying to tell me what to do and I don't really like that. So you really really want to understand how you're engaging with people, how you're saying things. It's okay to have fun. A lot of Aries people have a great sense of humor, but Aries also doesn't have the tact sometimes, especially if you're Mercury in Aries as well. But like sometimes the way Aries can talk, like you're telling somebody what to do, and it comes off a certain way. Where there are some signs that can tell people what to do and get away with it because the way they say things, right? So I think that is what you want to understand in terms of your dynamic, your friendships, and just like, and there's nothing wrong with with any sign. I'm not saying there's something wrong with Aries. I'm going to go through all the signs and talk about them and some of the strengths of the friendships and some of the potential problems. But that is what I'm here to do. Is I'm here to say, here's holistically what it is. Here's what can happen. Just be aware of that when you're interacting with people or when you're reflecting on those interactions.